Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Driver's Debrief. We've made our first tiny little milestone. We are on our way to 50 and then 100 and then so on and so forth. Welcome on in to the new episode. Guys, we got a lot to talk about, and actually we've cut out something pretty interesting from our coverage, and we're going to dive into why that is. But we're getting into all that down the line. First, if you're here watching on X, watching the live stream, welcome and thank you for joining. Please consider following at Drivers Debrief. We during the week retweet and post a lot of this news as it happens, so please take some time and make sure to follow. If you're watching on YouTube and Rumble, thank you very much. We go live every Monday, 8 a.m. Central Time. And then we upload the episodes after the fact to those platforms. So you can find us everywhere at Drivers Debrief. Looking at what we're going to be talking about today on our agenda, we have the cool down room. We're going to be going through some of the midweek news. We have World Endurance Championship Bahrain, MotoGP Malaysia, F1 Brazil. And then we are not talking about NASCAR at Martinsville. But we'll get into that after we go through some of the cool down room news bits and then some of our motorsports news. So let's start with the cool down room. Red Bull has inquired as to whether or not Franco Colapinto is interested in joining in a Red Bull seat. Unclear as to whether that would be for Red Bull, the main team, or for VCARB. Even this week, this weekend actually, at the Brazilian Grand Prix, Christian Horner was seen walking out of the Williams tent. So what I had written down as a rumor, as a potential move, seems to have some legs to it, some accuracy to it, as Christian Horner was obviously going to and from. VCARB is reportedly going to be renamed as the Racing Bulls for 2025. Little bit of advice: if you name the team after sponsors, every time you have a sponsor change every 2 or 3 years, the team name is going to change. Hope this helps. So I wish they just stopped changing the name. If they just would have kept it Toro Rosso, they could have just kept it Toro Rosso, and here we are basically back to an English version of that sort of. Toro Rosso, obviously Red Bull in Italian, but Racing Bulls now is just whatever. Sauber has signed Ignacio Rueda. He is the former Ferrari head of race strategy and sporting director, so he's a big name moving over to Sauber, which will be Audi, obviously. Kevin Magnussen has been heavily rumored to claim the Sauber seat for next year. So I don't remember who has been confirmed for Sauber next year. I know Bottas hasn't. I don't know if Zhou has been, but I know that Hülkenberg's confirmed for when it's Audi. So again, next year is really just going to be a transition year for Sauber. Whoever has that seat doesn't necessarily even mean they're going to make it to the Audi transition, the Audi era. Engine manufacturers Alpine and Honda have been fined a combined $1 million for cost cap breaches when it comes to engine development. Ferrari has... So that's F1. We're moving on to sports car news. Ferrari has been working on updates for the 499p, but does not expect to roll them out anytime soon. We're looking like mid to late next season. Laura Wintrop-Klauser and Christy Bagné are leaving General Motors and vacating their seats as the two most senior sports car program managers at General Motors, which leads us to the first conversation point for you, the audience. But what does this mean for General Motors sports car program? Obviously, I don't think it's gonna go anywhere immediately. But obviously, these two women are two of the tour de forces that brought about, oversaw, and implemented the Cadillac hypercar and GTP programs, and then obviously oversaw the maintenance of the Corvette program in GT racing. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the Cadillac may not get an Evo version or an updated version for future seasons if General Motors decides that it's not worth the investment? Obviously, Cadillac as a brand is undergoing a lot of EV movements with the new Lyriq and the E-Escalade or whatever. There's a new hybrid electric Escalade. So a lot of things changing at General Motors, but specifically Cadillac. So what does that mean for the Cadillac sports car program? I would love to get your thoughts. So comment below or reply to this post on Twitter, on X, this live stream post, what you think, where you think Cadillac is going to be and how long you think they're going to be running their hypercar and GTP programs. Brian Herta Autosport is in a bunch of lawsuits over a unnamed driver not paying a, quote, significant sum of money from a TCR program that driver ran in last year. So this is IMSA. It's not Continental Tire Sports Cars. What is it now? VP Racing Sports Car Challenge? Or is it Michelin Pilot Challenge, Michelin, whatever the TCR GT4 series is, that's where Brian Herta Autosports runs, and this is where the drama is coming from. Celia Martin has been promoted to the Iron Dames core driver lineup for next year, as the whole paddock, the world really expects Iron Dames to make a move from Lamborghini, sort of back to Porsche. They ran a Porsche and WEC back in or WEC in the GTE days before GT3, but they're expected to make a move back to Porsche, but for the first time in the GT3 era. And so she's come up through the Porsche ranks, so that's what they're looking for. Sarah Bovey, who has been part of that core Iron Dames lineup, has been upgraded from a bronze to a silver rated driver, so Celia Martin comes in as the bronze driver to that lineup. Ferrari and AF Corsa have announced that Phil Hansen, who you will know from the United Autosports LMP2 car in years past, they've announced that he is now going to be driving the number 83 499P in 2025 in WEC. Harry Tinknell has emerged as a frontrunner to join the Aston Martin LMDH Valkyrie program with Heart of Racing for 2025 WEC competition, which not only is Aston Martin getting a top-level sports car, but they're getting a top-level sports car that sounds the business. This Valkyrie, and I'm probably wrong, but I'm almost certain it's a V12, just sounds sinister, like in the best way. Really excited to see how the Valkyrie performs. Obviously, the Valkyrie fundamentally is a car designed out of the partnership with Adrian Newey that Red Bull and Aston Martin had a few years back. That changes a bit when you're restrained by IMSA and WEC regulations, but you're coming into a championship-winning team in sports cars with Heart of Racing. So I think the Aston will have a better start than Lamborghini, than Peugeot, than Alpine. I think it'll be just above those. I think it'll be competitive with privateer 963 teams, so Proton, whoever. It's not going to be, I don't think, with the factory Ferrari, Porsche, and Toyota entries, obviously. But I think it'll have a little edge over kind of the lower level teams. Toyota Gazoo Racing announced the departure of their longtime race director, Rob Lupin, with immediate effect. He's overseen the program since its inception, with Toyota going racing in LMP1 through the hypercar days and everything. So interesting. I didn't read any details as to why that is. I didn't see any, he did this, he did that, we're moving in this direction. None of that. It was just, hey, immediate effect, he's done. So I'm sure we'll get news down the line of why that is, and we'll obviously bring that to you when we have it. Porsche Penske Motorsport is unveiling the 963 Evo in next year's WEC and IMSA competition. Obviously, Evo, for those of you that don't know, is typically used in the sports car world when it's an evolution, same thing in rally, of an existing platform. So Porsche is making subtle changes to the 963. It's still going to be a 963, but it's going to be an evolved version of that for European and North American competition. Penske Entertainment, moving over to IndyCar, is considering bringing IndyCar to Mexico after the reception of Pato O'Ward in his FP1 appearance for McLaren last weekend. They're also considering bringing IndyCar to Interlagos. I don't know why I said it, Interlagos, which would be sick. That would be awesome. Could you imagine with how much of a handful those cars are and their reduced downforce? just sliding and power sliding out of all those corners. It would be a race, a spectacle to behold. Kiffin Simpson is returning to Chip Ganassi Racing in 2025 to drive the number 8 car. The USF Pro Championships are increasing the horsepower of their top 2 classes, USF Pro 2000 and USF 2000. Valencia, moving to MotoGP news, you might have heard Valencia was ravaged by horrible flash flooding. So Valencia is not going to host the MotoGP final race, but who will? Spain will still get the tourism, but it's going to Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. So Spain will still get the MotoGP finale. We're getting that, I think, next weekend or the following weekend. And so we're gonna get MotoGP at Barcelona, which is always fun, always cool. And that'll be the championship decider. So we're gonna get into MotoGP a little bit later. Last bit of news for our Aussie listeners: Mark Winterbottom is going to rejoin Tickford Racing just over a decade after winning his V8 Supercars title with Tickford. Okay, so let's start with why we're not talking about NASCAR. Okay, let's just get it out of the way. All right, NASCAR. That's a good cup of coffee. Okay, so since NASCAR moved over to NBC, I haven't been able to watch it. I have the NBC Sports app. I have TV provider credentials. I have Peacock. Can't stream it. I'm always, this content's not available in your region, all that sort of jazz. And no, I'm not going to get a VPN. But I haven't been able to watch NASCAR for a few months. There's been a time or two where I've been out at my parents or with friends or out of Chili's or whatever, where the race is on and you can watch it, but I haven't been able to watch it consistently. So part of this is out of principle. The other part of it is it's just getting ridiculous because I'm not able to add more insight than any of you would have had, having not been able to watch the races. I'm really just regurgitating what I'm seeing online and adding a twist to it rather than having seen the race, the original content, and then providing insight into what I saw, what my thoughts were, stuff like that. So we're not going to be covering NASCAR unless I can watch the races. Now we do have some NASCAR drama, but there's plenty of NASCAR podcasts out there that watch the race, that go frame by frame, go into specific rules. So I encourage you to go check those places out. But we'll be covering NASCAR when we're able to watch it. But that looks like it's just going to be the Fox portion of the season. So that's NASCAR. Moving into World Endurance Championship, Bahrain. Let's go through our top 10 in Hypercar. In 10th, we have the number 36 Alpine. In 9th, we have the number 83 AF Corsa Ferrari. In 8th, the number 38 Hertz Team Jota Porsche. In 7th, the number 2 Cadillac. In 6th, the number 15 BMW. In 5th, the 35 Alpine. In 4th, the number 93 Peugeot. In 3rd, the number 5 Porsche. In 2nd, the number 51 Ferrari. And winning the race was the number 8 Toyota. Now, there was a modification to this result because that number 51 Ferrari that finished 2nd exceeded its tire allocation for the entire week. So it was dropped way down the order. Moving the number 5 Porsche Penske car into 2nd and moving the number 93 Peugeot up into 3rd. So obviously the rest of the order moves up, but Peugeot getting a podium in the Peugeot 9x8 was not on anybody's bingo card for Bahrain. Let's go through some of the talking points. Toyota secures the Constructors' Championship while Porsche wins the Drivers' Championship in Hypercar, and that was the number 6 car that won the Drivers' Championship of Lauderer, Estra, and Vantor. Andre Lauderer won the first ever WEC Championship in 2012, and now he wins the most recent championship in 2024, which this is logically necessary, but it's interesting to note that he now holds the record for the longest gap between championship wins in World Endurance Championship. It's also the first time in World Endurance Championship history that Le Mans, the Drivers' Championship, and the Constructors' Championship have all been won by different manufacturers. You have Ferrari at Le Mans, Toyota Constructors, Porsche Drivers. Now, let's go into Wearing the hat for a reason, folks. Let's go into what Porsche has won in global sports car racing this year. Are you ready? The 24 Hours of Daytona, the the Bathurst 12 Hour, the IMSA GTP Team Championship, the IMSA GTP Drivers Championship, the IMSA GTP Constructors Championship, the Michelin Endurance Cup Championship in GTP, the IMSA GTD Pro Drivers Championship with Rexy, the IMSA GTD Pro Constructors Championship, the World Endurance Championship Hypercar Drivers Cup, the WEC LMGT3 Drivers Championship, the WEC LMGT3 Teams Championship, the World Cup of Hypercar in WEC, and the Formula E Drivers Championship. Now, for the F1 fans that are listening, and they say, what the hell is a teams and constructors? How is that different? So in F1, the only teams are the manufacturers, right? So Ferrari is the manufacturer, but they're also the team. And there's no Ferrari manufacturer outside of the Ferrari team. Same thing with Alpine. There's no Alpine-made car being run by a team other than Alpine. In IMSA and WEC, you have privateer teams that'll run a manufacturer's car. So for instance, in IMSA, they won the Drivers' Championship with Rexy, but they won the Manufacturers' Championship because of all the Porsches running in GTD Pro. They had the highest average, result across the season, winning on points. And that's different from the Teams Championship because the Teams Championship is regardless of manufacturer, team by team. So that would be AO Racing, Heart of Racing, Racing Competizione. And that's regardless of manufacturer. So that's how that breaks down. So Roger Penske, that is also his 46th championship across IndyCar, NASCAR, sports cars, everything. An incredible feat. I mean, the Porsche 963 across sports car racing didn't dominate in the sense that it won every race or had massive leads, but it swept almost every single it did sweep every championship it competed in other than the constructors in hypercar. That is a good cup of coffee. So I'm nervous but also excited because when Porsche unveils the 963 Evo, obviously it's supposed to be an improvement on the 963, but the 963, its first year out, was miserable. So I'm nervous that the first run with the 963, new car, right? Ready to take on the world, did not perform. And so now they've gotten it into a window where it performs. Obviously, BOP plays a part in that. I'm just nervous that the Evo may start to go backwards rather than going forwards. But we'll see. The judgment will be held off for now. So that is World Endurance Championship at Bahrain. That was the finale of the season. So we are done with global sports car racing. All that we have left is MotoGP and Formula One. And NASCAR, I guess. But sad times. Moving into Formula One. We're going to quickly go through the sprint. Just the top 10. In 10th was Albon, 9th Liam Lawson, 8th Sergio Perez, 7th Pierre Gasly, 6th George Russell, 5th Carlos Sainz, 4th Max Verstappen, 3rd Charles Leclerc, 2nd Oscar Piastri, and 1st place Lando Norris in the McLaren Mercedes. With a little bit of drama because there were team orders and the VSC was held off until team orders were executed, all sorts of stuff. But what can you do? We're not going to get we're not going to muddle in sprint race drama because we have one of the most exciting Grand Prix I've seen in a long, long time to go through. And beyond that, I still think Brazil should be the season finale. Screw Abu Dhabi. I do not care. I get that it's flashy, rich, lights everywhere. Let's get back to good old-fashioned mucking about down in Brazil. So, disqualified. Nico Hulkenberg did not finish. Franco Colapinto and Carlos Sainz Jr. And we had two do not starts, Lance Stroll, Alexander Albon. Okay, so now that we've gone through that, in 15th was Guan Yu Zhou, 14th Fernando Alonso, 13th Valtteri Bottas, 12th Ollie Behrman filling in for the sick Kevin Magnussen, 11th Sergio Perez, 10th Lewis Hamilton, 9th Liam Lawson, 8th Oscar Piastri, 7th Yuki Tsunoda, 6th Lando Norris, Fifth, Charles Leclerc. Fourth, George Russell. Third, Pierre Gasly. Second, Esteban Ocon. And first place, Max Verstappen. Now, you might sit there and say, wait a minute, what? Didn't Max Verstappen start 17th? Yes. Yes, he did. So let's go through some of the drama. So let's just go to the beginning. Okay, let's start at the beginning. They do a warm-up lap. Lance Stroll in turn 4 on the warm-up lap spins his car. Rear brake lock up. The rear end steps around. He doesn't wreck, or maybe he just noses the barrier a little bit. It doesn't seemingly damage the car. He's sitting on concrete. He's sitting on asphalt. Gets the car refired. Okay, disaster avoided. Turns his Aston Martin around, and instead of driving back the way he came, which would have been on asphalt, he attempts to drive through the entire gravel trap. Listeners, what happens in gravel traps typically to drivers who go through? Oh, they get stopped. Lance Stroll beached himself in a gravel trap. Now, I hear myself saying that, and I'm like, that's not okay, big deal. Somebody got beached in gravel. The mind-numbing part about this is that he was fine on asphalt. It's not like he spun into the gravel trap. He drove into it intentionally. If you see Lance Stroll's body language, he just doesn't seem to care anymore. And this is the second conversation point for the listeners. The first was about GM sports car racing. I had to go back and check the notes there. The second is, does Lance Stroll care? Is Lance Stroll's head in the right place? Has he completely checked out from really caring, getting fired up, having any energy, having any passion about Formula One? Is he just completely, and I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical question, actually, because there is only one answer, and that he is. Lance Stroll, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, said Fernando Alonso is performing at a fantastic level, but Lance himself is performing as good or better. And you just got to look at the results. He's beaten them the last few races. Lance, do you want to revisit that? You want to run that one back? No. Oh, no. Okay, we're just gonna let that one sit out there and marinate. All right, cool. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with Lance Stroll, but because of that, there was an aborted start. So the field came back around, lined up on the grid. They aborted the start, which you're only supposed to do another warm-up lap if you're instructed. Lando Norris pulled away and decided he's going to do another warm-up lap. There's a whole slew of rule violations by a lot of people on the first lap. Red Bull brought it up. I'm not going to get into all that. There was no penalties. There was a reprimand. Whatever. So let's talk about the race. Let's talk about some of the talking points from the race. So Max, by lap 30, had gone from 17th to 5th. In these wet conditions, no DRS, just pure driving. Now, the retort will be that Red Bull is the best car. No, it's not. Red Bull is definitely the second best car. You can make an argument it's third best, but I'm going to say it's second best. Even though Ferrari's ahead in the constructors, all that means is that they have two drivers in... What the hell is happening? Oh, that was X. Sorry, guys. Hello. How are you? That totally threw me off. I saw that in Streamlabs. So, Max, I think it's clear that Ferrari is not the second best car. It's just that Ferrari has two drivers who are performing on average better than Red Bull, but they're performing okay. So I think that's what we can take away. But the Red Bull is definitely the second best car. So the bigger question is, can you classify Max's drive that we saw in and amongst the all-time greats? And I think, personally, I think the answer is yes. I've seen people already comparing it to the lap of the gods that Senna did at Donington in the wet. I think it was 91 or 93. Max was performing on a level that we have not seen, I don't think, in his career. Now, so this is where we open it up for the third conversation point. So comment, or in X, if you're watching this live, please do send a message. Talk to me in the chat. Max seems to be a better driver when he's just racing through the field than when he's racing for a championship. So let me explain myself a little bit. When he's fighting Lando at Mexico, he made horrible he made horrible moves, was desperate, was making moves that are not sportsmanlike, they were not clean, and we saw the same thing with Lewis in 2021. But in the wet conditions, he, like a hot knife through warm butter, cut his way through the field, through cars that were slower, through cars that were faster, through a pit stop or two, in mixed conditions with horrible visibility, no DRS, drove his way from the back to the front. For all the people that on X or other places were saying this is proof from Mexico or whatever, that Max can't drive, that he's always been a bully, and that Max can't drive unless he's driving dirty, and we've known this all along, that narrative has to be pushed out. It has to be avoided. And this is where I am fortunate to not have a dog in the Max Orlando fight. As a Fernando Alonso fan, I am completely abstaining from that. But I can point out the reality of the situation in both cases. We can talk about how Max deserved the penalties in Mexico, and Max deserved a penalty at Coda, but also that Lando is a whiny baby who, even though he's in the best car, cannot execute. So let's talk about that. Let's get into Lando. Lando, once again, has no one to blame but himself. He started on pole in the fastest car. If you put Fernando Alonso in that McLaren, he wins the race. Change my mind. Lando Norris loses the lead going into turn one again. He's had 7 poles this season. 6 of them, he's not in the lead by turn one. That is not the car's fault. That is not strategy's fault. That is not the race surface's fault. That is not the race director's fault, the steward's fault, or Max's fault. Lando fans cannot run away from this. Lando Norris is the driver responsible for boggling his pole positions. But you'll find McLaren and Lando Norris defenders who, in the same breath as saying Lando deserved that pole or whatever, saying, well, the McLaren's not the fastest car, but Lando had this or that caused him to not be... Which one is it? Is he the fastest or is he not the fastest? You can't have it both ways. So, Alain Prost made a very insightful comment about Lando Norris. I will just let people go look it up and read it. But you have people like Fernando who did everything they could in their control at their days at Ferrari, where it would be getting the best start possible, working their way up through the field, battling for the lead. And there were things outside of their control that caused them to not win championships or not win races. And I'm not just saying Fernando, but other drivers too, right? Lewis in 2007, there were things outside of his control. There was a lot throughout Formula One that you can't control. You'll only get sympathy if you succeed at what you can control. Lando can control his starts, and he's not executing. So no sympathy from me. Lando Norris, look at the mirror. That's why you're not winning. Also, let's keep in mind Miami of this year. The gap was narrower with all of Max's wins at the beginning of the season. The gap was narrower after Miami than it is now. And and Lando's what? won several races, won some sprints. Or no, Max is undefeated in the last 7 sprints or whatever. Lando's been winning the Grand Prix. Ferrari's won a few. But it's a wider Drivers' Championship gap. I think it's like 64 points now or 60 something. And at Miami, it was 50 something. So McLaren not having the fastest car actually had them closer in the Drivers' Championship than them having undeniably the best car in the field across a variety of tracks. And the gap is widened. Just saying. You're going to have to come to terms with that. So let's go through some other facts. Alpine got a double podium, which is incredible. I don't like Gasly or Ocon, but it was a great result from them. It is the first Renault/Alpine double podium since Alonso and Fisichella podiumed in 2006 with Felipe Massa. That's how long it's been since they've had a double podium. Max Verstappen is the first driver since Kimi Räikkönen in 2005, I believe, to go from 17th to win the race. It was Kimi Räikkönen at Suzuka. Nico Hülkenberg got a black flag for being beached on an apex curb, which I don't know how this is fair because what ended up happening was Nico was beached. Officials came out. The corner workers pushed him and let him resume. And apparently him being pushed back onto the track was what was unsafe, so Hülkenberg was black flagged. FIA, how is that fair to Hülkenberg or Haas? They didn't choose that. The corner workers did. That should be something where Haas and Hülkenberg are free to race. Not just he didn't get to race, he was disqualified. But it was because of something that the corner workers did. So maybe FIA have better coaching with your corner workers and your track workers. Okay? All right, cool. All right, done with Formula One. Thank God. Let's move into MotoGP. So, we had a sprint race. Pecco Bagnaia dumps the bike. Jorge Martin wins. Okay, done. Covered the sprint. Cool. This MotoGP race was one of the most insane, tight, and exciting races I have seen in years. Years. I like going back to prime Marc Marquez, prime Valentino Rossi fights. And it was between Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin. So let's go ahead and go through the results and then we'll jump into it. DNF, Nakagami, DNF, Joao Mir, and Jack Miller, and others. We got Savadori in 18th, Andrea Iannone in 17th, Raul Fernandez in 16th, Luca Marini in 15th, Franco Morbidelli in 14th, Aleix Espargaro in 13th, Marc Marquez 12th, Johan Zarco in 11th, Augusto Fernandez in 10th, Marco Bezzecchi in 9th, Alex Rins in 8th, Maverick Vinales in 7th, Fabio Quartararo in 6th, Pedro Acosta in 5th, Alex Marquez 4th, 3rd was Enea Bastianini, 2nd was Jorge Martin, and in 1st place, tightening up the championship by I think 5 points, was Pecco Bagnaia. So let's go through some of the talking points. Pecco shows us what he could have done in the sprint race. The first 6 laps or so was completely over, under, every single corner. There was a move. The commentators were out of their seats shouting with how entertaining this race was. So if you didn't watch it, you need to go back and watch it. I promise you it's worth it. But Pecco shows us if he had kept himself on the bike in the sprint race, this was a track and a bike that Pecco could have won on and tightened that championship down even further. So really his only hope going into Barcelona is that if Jorge Martin dumps the bike and Pecco wins both sprint and the GP, that he can win the championship. Otherwise, it's a 24-point gap, I believe. It's just too wide. It's a huge gap to overcome. And Jorge Martin, when he doesn't dump the bike, has been winning. So let's talk about what happened at the beginning of the race. And I was around and saw Marco Simoncelli get killed live. at Malaysia in 2011, and that was, as a kid, it's a scarring thing to watch, and it was scary. And we nearly had it again at Malaysia with the Aussie Jack Miller. So there was a scary accident in turn 2, and Jack Miller's helmet, his head, got stuck on the rear tire under the rear fairing of another bike. And the photo that he posted on Instagram is scary. I mean, his head is like turned all the way around. I don't know how it didn't snap his neck. That's just the long and short of it. I don't know how it did not snap his neck and kill him instantly. I thought he was dead, and they red flagged it. His legs got run over as well. They had the doctors out there with like the privacy curtains on track, and I felt sick. You get that sickening feeling, and this is really one of the first seasons I've watched from start to finish since 2015, 2016. Again, that whole Rossi Marquez era. So, kind of going back to having lost Simoncelli. I just got the most sickening feeling in my gut, because it just had that, it had that feeling. KTM, the guys in the garage looked absolutely sick, and Jack Miller's wife was there. But obviously, I'm pleased to say this, but Jack Miller is alive. He was walking, which I don't know how with a bike running over your legs, but genuinely thank God that Jack Miller is alive and walking, because if that happened 10 times, 9 other times, he doesn't walk away from that. We also saw that Martin doesn't really have the better of Bagnaia. If we could just pull all the mistakes away, it'd be an interesting fight. But this leads me to my final, the third. So we had GM sports car program, hypercar sports cars. We had Lance Stroll, kind of Lando Norris conversation. This is our third conversation point, which is, should sprint races exist in MotoGP? So if you took away all of the points from sprint races and you just took Grand Prix, Pecco Bagnaia is leading the championship by like 90-something points. He walks away with it. So my question is, do sprints make the championship more fair? Or do the sprints rob people like Bagnaia, who should have walked away with this championship, with the championship? Does it rob them of the championship? Does that take it away from them? Now, you could argue, well, sprints are part of it. You just got to be able to perform across the season. But again, it kind of goes back to when we look at championships that other riders have won, how can you compare whoever wins this championship? How can you compare that experience, that achievement, to a championship pre-sprint? Because that person didn't have to deal with maybe riders or bikes or tracks where somebody was better in 10 laps than they were over a 20-something Grand Prix. I think the sprints in MotoGP and F1 are purely there to just make ticket sales and commercial sales on TV and advertising and everything. I don't think it adds anything. If I'm going to be completely honest, I don't think it makes the championship more valuable. I don't think it makes it more entertaining. And if anything, it just opens up opportunities for people to get hurt or wreck more than already existed for less of a reward when it comes to the points. So should they be kept? Comment live on this X stream, or if you're watching on YouTube and Rumble, comment and let me know what you think. Iannone definitely was rusty, but he didn't finish last. Andre Iannone beat a full-time MotoGP rider. So I'll give him credit for that. But he was definitely rusty. His stamina was not there because these GP bikes, as he even said, are more physical than the World Superbikes that he's used to riding. Marc Marquez dumped his bike in the final corner, and as such, only finishing 12th. Enea Bastianini moves into third in the Riders' Championship. So we'll see. We have a fight for first, but we also have a fight for third in that championship. That'll be wrapped up in Barcelona. And then Francesco Bagnaia becomes the 6th rider in MotoGP history. The 6th in the history of the sport to win 10 or more Grand Prix in a season. Now, when I read out who he joins, think back to the sprint question of whether or not that should be included in the championship or just at all. Because when you hear who he's amongst, I think it actually further serves to prove the point that sprint shouldn't be included. He will join Rossi, Agostini, Marquez, Stoner, and Doohan. Pecco Bagnaia is in that class in terms of how many wins in a season. But he might not win the championship. I think that says everything you need to know. Looking forward, guys, we got Formula One at Las Vegas. We have the NASCAR Championship in Phoenix. And we have MotoGP in Barcelona, which is going to be a stupid cool race, the championship finale. So I will have championship news to bring you next weekend when it comes to MotoGP. And then we have championship news in NASCAR. But the F1 season obviously is the last to finish up. So make sure to come back here next Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to episode 10 of the Drivers Debrief. If you want to stay up to date on all this news as it happens, make sure to follow on X at Drivers Debrief. Super easy to remember. And if you're watching this, thank you. Please like the video, follow or subscribe, and share with your friends on YouTube or Rumble. All the tags up on the top of the screen. Thank you so much for coming by and watching episode 10 of the Drivers Debrief. I'll see you next time.